Hello and welcome to our first of hopefully many web blogs, video blogs about starting a new church. My name is Roger Burns Watson, and along with my wife Janice, we are the founding ministers of Tree of Life Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in Delaware County, Ohio, which is just north of Columbus. What we want to do through this web blog is begin to share some of the ups and downs, the joys and tribulations of starting a new church. We just began this in October of 2009, so we're very new into this. What we also want to do through this blog is begin to start some conversation with folks. So we're going to raise some issues that we think have some meaning beyond just a new church start, beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here in Delaware, and create some conversation for folks on the intersection, which is where this blog is going to be hosted at. Where we wanted to begin was to begin to talk about what it means to plant a Disciple of Christ congregation in the 21st century, specifically an Anglo congregation, which is what we're doing here in Delaware. To be honest, there has been some discussion, some debate about the new church movement within disciples, about whether we're really planting disciple congregations. A lot of that has to do with the emergence of a number of racial ethnic congregations, but there's been some tension about what it means to plant a disciple congregation. But we also have to put that into context of trying to do a church plant and post-denominational America. So what we want to do in this blog is just to lay out kind of what we're dealing with on the new church front and to elicit some comment and conversation from you all. Let me start by sharing a story with you. This came to us through a Facebook post, wall to wall, from a friend of mine. They are just beginning to become part of a community. There's a couple and their two children. And the lady was Facebooking me, telling me about what happened as she was driving home with her 10-year-old daughter. Our daughter had been coming to some of our events, and she was sitting in the back of the car with her mom, and she was looking through a book about kids around the world, and she came across this part about religion, and she asked her mom whether I, as one of the ministers of the new church start, was in fact her pope, their pope. The lady told me in the Facebook post that she very successfully avoided driving the car off the road while laughing hysterically at the thought of me being pope. And those of you that know me know there's no real pope-like qualities about myself, but she tried to explain to this 10-year-old daughter of hers that no, in fact, I was not the pope, that I was the minister. It was very confusing for this child because she was looking at a book, and this is what Christians did. This is what the book said that Christians had. The reason that I share that story with you is because that seems to be the context in which Janice and I find ourselves operating. That the folks that we're reaching out to, and we're predominantly trying to bring the good news of the gospel to folks who may have never heard it before, or if they've heard it, it certainly hasn't been because they've been involved intimately in a faith community, certainly a Christian faith community. We're trying to reach out to those folks. And the perception that we are constantly encountering is that there's this group of people called Christians. There's no real distinction between them, Catholic, Protestant. There's no understanding of Pentecostals or Methodists or certainly of disciples. There's just Christians. And a lot of that context of what it means to be Christian has been shaped by popular culture, by what people see on the news, by what they hear stories about on the radio and other places, what they read about. So certainly when one part of the body suffers, when a televangelist goes down in flames, that's a Christian. If we're lucky, when the church does something well, maybe all of us get to bask in the glory of that. But there's this thing called Christian. So as we're beginning to plant a Disciple of Christ congregation, which is what we're trying to do, we're encountering a group of people for whom disciples means nothing, because it's just this amorphous understanding of Christianity. Janice and I encountered that a little bit when we were missionaries in Kenya through Global Ministries. We were serving with the Presbyterian Church of East Africa and working with them, but the disciples didn't have a real presence in Kenya, and we were trying to explain who we are. Disciples know that on the best of days it's kind of difficult always to explain what it means to be a disciple, but we could always, in Kenya at least, around church people say, well, we're like the Presbyterians, but different. Here's how we differ, here's how we're the same. Here's how we're a little bit like the Catholics, here's how we're not. But when you're dealing with folks that don't have any of that, they don't have any understanding of the way the church works, of what people believe, that conversation just can't take place. So my question to you all that are watching this, that might be wanting to be part of this discussion, is what do we do? What does it mean to plant a disciple congregation in this post-denominational world that we live in? Do we mine our tradition? Do we go back and look at what our forebears have done? I'm thinking in particular of Walter Scott, one of the great evangelists of the disciples, who would go into a town, pull all the kids together that he could, teach them this 5-finger exercise. It's a very simple method of evangelism that communicated what he believed to be the essence of the gospel. Sent those kids home, they would tell their parents, and from there he would begin to draw people together. Do we go back? Do we reinstitute the use of the 5-finger exercise? Would that even work in 21st century America? Do we do a modified version of that? Do we try and explain what it means to be a disciple using 5 fingers, but maybe with a different interpretation of what they mean? Exactly how are we going to communicate that in the world in which we live in? How do we plant disciple congregations in a world in which denominations make little or no sense? So that's kind of our question for you. It's something that Jan and I continue to work through, continue to have to factor in our conversations with folks, especially those that don't have any real experience with the Christian faith. So we'd be interested in hearing your comments and your posts, and we welcome the conversation.